The first hit is the fists on wood. Hard, fast. Before sunrise, when the street is a hush of sprinklers and sleepy dogs, the pounding turns his front door into a drum. Gerald freezes beside the kitchen sink, water running, mug halfway to his lip, a voice through the door. Police. Wellness check. He feels his throat close. He is fine. He is breathing. He is very awake now. He walks to the door anyway because what else can you do when authority is on your porch? He opens it to the white glare of flashlights, the sharp scent of rain on concrete, and two uniforms scanning past him, over him, into him. Are you Gerald Amani? Are you alone? Are you safe? He answers. Yes. 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 The questions keep coming like a stutter of bright light, each one implying a danger that does not exist. He catches his reflection in the officer's sunglasses. Small, distorted, a man inside a man. The porch light buzzes. A neighbor's blinds lift a fraction. Someone records with a phone. Gerald feels heat climb his chest as one officer asks to step inside. He says no. The word lands like a dropped penny. A tiny sound, but it echoes. The officer's jaw tightens. The second officer leans toward his radio, murmurs with a tilt of the head that says they can wait all night. Gerald feels the weight of his brass house key in his pocket and thinks of locks, thresholds, and how a home becomes a stage when someone else names it a scene. A final question. Has anyone here threatened you? He says again that he is fine, that he has no idea who called. The officer scratches something on a pad. Behind them, a man in a golf shirt strolls the sidewalk, slow as a tide, smiling without teeth. Gerald watches him pass and feels the first cold thought cut through the fog. This is not a check. This is a message. The radios hiss. The officers retreat. The porch light flickers, then settles. The man in the golf shirt glances back. And that is when Gerald recognizes him. The second time comes at lunch, bright noon, patio umbrella casting careful shade over a bowl of oranges he set out to feel ordinary. The knock again. Same script, different day. Wellness check. He sees the patrol car idling, sees neighbors pause at their mailboxes with that strained casualness of people who want to witness but not participate. The same man in the golf shirt stands by the jacaranda tree across the street, arms folded, posture loose with ownership. The president of the Homeowners Association, the one who signs letters about weeds and mailbox paint. His smile rises and falls like a line on a monitor. Gerald steps onto the porch, keeps the door at his back like a shield. He answers all the questions again. He keeps his voice even. He watches the officer's hands, the way one rests on the edge of a belt, fingertips grazing the cold shape of authority. The other officer glances at the oranges with a small smirk, because apparently a bowl of fruit is evidence of nothing. Gerald feels the humiliation like a live current running beneath his skin. The words wellness and check turn bitter on the tongue. He sees the way the street rearranges itself around him, a soft circle of space, as if he were contagious. Bystanders perform little rituals of avoidance. A mother pulls her child's scooter to the curb. A jogger pretends to stretch for too long. A delivery driver sets a package down and drifts backward, eyes on the uniforms. The president's voice floats across. Oh, so helpful, asking the officers if they need the gate code next time, as if he is a host and Gerald is an unruly guest. The officers thank him briefly, and Gerald watches who gets thanked and who gets questioned. Power is a choreography you can feel in your bones. He swallows, nods, agrees to nothing. When they leave, the president taps his phone once like a man who just ordered a service he expects to arrive on time. Gerald's jaw aches from holding still. He closes the door. He locks it. He stands in the cool foyer and lets the anger unfurl like a banner. This will not keep happening. But the next knock comes 3 days later. He does not yell. He does not pace. He opens the worn leather briefcase that lives in the hall closet, a relic from a younger man who believed documents could calm storms. Inside are blank request forms for public records, a laminated card that lists the state statute on open records, and a fountain pen that scratches with a sound like insects under bark. He sets them on the dining table beside his brass key, its grooves bright with years of use, and breathes. He hears in his head the voice of the city clerk, a careful voice, the voice of a person who spends life shepherding paper and truth. She once told him, "Call me any time," and used his first name the way old friends do. He pulls out his phone and scrolls to her contact. He does not press dial yet. The porch light hums through the glass. He imagines the welfare call as a line on a chart. 1 spike, 2, 3. He can see the shape of it forming even before he draws it. He opens his laptop and starts with what the law allows him to ask for. He requests all dispatch logs for his address over the last 6 months, including caller IDs if available, and any internal notes that explain the basis for welfare checks. He asks for audio recordings of the calls. He asks for timestamps precise to the minute. He keeps the tone of the request neutral, the way you hold a match away from paper. While he types, his phone buzzes with a call from a number he knows well. The clerk. She greets him with the warmth of someone who thinks in calendars and copies. She says they will start the search today. He thanks her quietly. He feels the invisible threads stretching between offices and houses, connecting him to the machine that keeps records of what people try to hide. Outside, sprinklers stutter on across the president's perfect lawn, a metronome for other people's routines. Gerald places the pen, the briefcase, and the brass key in a neat row. He is not a man without power. He is a man deciding when to show it. The first batch of records arrives fast, faster than he expects, like the mail on a lucky day. He opens the files and listens to the audio with headphones, the voices turned intimate by proximity. He hears the same hesitant preface each time. I am concerned about my neighbor. He hears the shift into performance. He lives alone. He has been acting erratic. He has packages piling up. He hears the thin scrape of theater in every phrase. The dispatcher steers with patience, asks for details, asks for the caller's name. The name sometimes arrives mumbled. Once it is clear as a bell. Once it is spelled out letter by letter because the caller wants to be sure it is recorded correctly. He writes that down. He builds a spreadsheet, columns marching in tidy order. Date, time, caller, notes. He adds a new column that nobody asked for. Location from which call was made if available. When a note mentions the same block number, his pen taps the table in a little rhythm of satisfaction. He prints the logs and tapes them to his dining wall in a grid, because a wall can hold what your brain cannot. The chart grows and a shape emerges as if the data were a constellation he always knew was there. The shape points to one star, the same board member's phone. Again and again, he brings the pages to the police station, not like a supplicant but like a witness. He asks for a supervisor. He shows the chart without a flourish, just offers it the way one offers a photograph of a family member to a friend. The supervisor's eyes narrow. A quiet, a nod, a promise to review. When Gerald leaves, one of the officers holds the door and says almost under breath that patterns like this are not what the welfare system is for. It is small. It is everything. He returns home and sits in the quiet. A breath. A pause. He lets the relief trickle and then stop. He knows this is only the first gear turning. He knows the machine will push back. The homeowners association meets in a room that smells like new carpet and old coffee. The president sits at the head of a long table as if it were designed for him. Fingers steepled, voice syrupy with benevolence. Gerald attends because the letters in his mailbox insist he is part of a community, and a community means you face people with both eyes open. He brings his leather briefcase and leaves it closed at his feet, a silent wait. When he speaks during the open comment period, he does not accuse. He asks the board to acknowledge that multiple welfare checks have been triggered for one address and to explain the standard by which such calls are made. The room tightens, air thinning. A board member coughs into a plastic cup. The president smiles the kind of smile that wants to flatten everything into neighborliness. He says the board does not control the police. He says welfare checks are for safety. He says if Gerald has nothing to hide, then nothing is wrong. The line lands like a challenge tossed from a balcony. Gerald feels heat rise to his face, but his voice remains even. He mentions the logs. He mentions that one phone number appears with unusual repetition. A woman in the back mutters that people should mind their own business. The president's eyes flick toward the golf shirt man on his right, the one who always takes notes nobody ever sees. The president declares the discussion closed. Gerald breathes. He sends a formal letter the next morning, preserving all records related to board communications about him. The board replies through an attorney, a letter perfumed with legalese that turns neighbor into plaintiff, without ever saying the word. The calls keep coming. Another knock at dusk, another ring of the bell that feels like someone tested the gate and found a crack. Gerald files a complaint with the police department's internal review, attaching the chart and requesting a misuse evaluation of the welfare system. The board fines him for a lawn he cut yesterday. The steps feel preordained. Personal injustice, institutional resistance, legal shadow. He stands in his foyer holding the letter about the fine and knows the next move must make a noise they cannot ignore. The town hall meeting is full in that particular way people gather when a story grows legs and walks without permission. Neighbors, reporters, board members, officers, the attorney with the tailored suit, the president with a fresh tie and eyes that try not to blink. Gerald stands near the front, the leather briefcase on the floor by his ankle, the brass key tucked inside his palm like a talisman. He hears the murmur of voices, the subtle shift that comes when certain words take the air: misuse, liability, harassment. When it is his turn to speak, he does not raise his voice. He opens the briefcase, sets the chart on the lectern, and lets the pages hang like a curtain that will not close. He presses play on a small speaker and the room fills with the caller's voice. Concern, erratic, alone. The same phrasing, like someone performing a script they think sounds official. He steps through the dates, the times, the cross references to the same board member's phone and the proximity of the calls to board meetings where he criticized the fines. He does not accuse the police. He thanks them for coming and for listening. He looks at the department representative and watches the comprehension settle, a stone finding its riverbed. The representative clears his throat, speaks into the mic, and issues something plain that hits the room like a gavel. A warning. Misuse of welfare checks will not be tolerated. False reports expose the caller to penalties. The board's attorney leans forward to salvage control and says something about exposure to liability, the phrase sharp and shiny as a broken bottle under light. The president's hand tightens on the edge of the table. Someone in the back gasps when the name on the audio matches the board member seated 2 chairs from the president. The name that spelled itself out, letter by letter. The president looks left, then right, then at the distance, as if hunting for an exit not built into the plan. Gerald lets the silence do the work. He does not add that he trains public agencies on records compliance for a living, that he reads statutes the way some people read weather. He does not need to say it. The seeds already bloomed. The room knows. The slow motion of power turning around has its own sound, like a flag changing direction in the wind. The board asks for a recess. Nobody moves. By morning, the outside world arrives like a wave meeting a cliff. The local paper runs a headline about weaponized welfare checks. A podcast host calls Gerald's quiet method a blueprint. A television crew angles for a shot of the jacaranda tree and the house with the buzzing porch light. In the cul-de-sac, conversations sprout along sidewalks like wildflowers after rain. The mothers who whispered now ask pointed questions about procedures. The jogger who stretched 2 long knocks to say he is sorry he pretended not to see. Community activists drop flyers about the line between concern and harassment. A city council member posts a thread about misuse of emergency systems and tags the police department, the homeowners association, and the attorney who said liability out loud. Panic flutters in institutional halls. Emails titled Urgent Thread and Immediate Guidance multiply. The board president issues a statement about misunderstanding and care for safety that reads like it was written by a committee that never met Gerald's eyes. It changes nothing. Pressure mounts until it becomes a kind of gravity. The president resigns in an afternoon of cloudy apologies. The board member whose phone birthed the calls steps down too, mouth tight, refusing interviews at a speed that almost seems athletic. The Homeowners Association's attorney calls an emergency session, announces a new verification protocol that requires corroboration, and an on-site association liaison before any welfare call is endorsed or facilitated. The police publish a notice about consequences for false reports. Gerald walks his street that evening and feels the neighborhood blink awake, as if the houses themselves were relieved to stop performing. He passes the jacaranda and notices the tiny purple blossoms gathering at the roots, soft as a sigh. He does not celebrate. Not yet. He knows victories are not dessert. They are maintenance. The porch light above his door buzzes and then, miraculously, goes silent. The meeting to adopt the protocol is quieter than the night of the reversal, but the quiet feels sturdy. People speak in complete sentences. The new board chair, a woman with a math teacher's backbone, reads the language that will now govern how concern becomes action. Before a welfare call is made in this neighborhood, corroboration is required from more than one source. Before an officer steps onto a porch in the name of safety, an on-site association liaison will be present, accountable, and recorded. There are rules now that require humility before the knock. Gerald reads the draft while his thumb rubs the groove of his brass key, the old habit settling him into the present. He suggests a line about documentation that protects both the caller and the called. They added. He suggests a periodic review of the protocol with the police liaison and the city clerk's office. They add that too. He feels the room tilt toward something like culture, not just policy, a shared memory that will change what neighbors consider an emergency. Outside, the jacaranda sways. The president's old seat sits empty and stays that way for a beat longer than comfortable. People seem to listen to the emptiness. A reporter asks Gerald what it feels like to win. He thinks of the first knock. He thinks of the tiny victories that were not tiny at all. He thinks of the sound a chart makes when it is lifted from a table, that soft friction of paper and wood that means something is about to be shown. He says it does not feel like winning. It feels like returning. It feels like the house I live in is my own again. He shifts his briefcase against his calf and looks around the room at neighbors who finally see him not as a subject, but as a man who asked questions and refused to be steered out of his doorway. The vote is unanimous. The new rules pass. On the way out, he flicks the porch light and it glows without a sound. He stands in that glow for a breath, the brass key warm in his palm, and thinks this time the check is ours. True safety begins when power is forced to account for how it is used, not when fear is allowed to decide what it sees. Send this to a friend who needs to hear this story.